Joining us now is the Dean of Admissions for the Ivy League's University of Pennsylvania, Eric Furda. Penn admitted just 14% of its applicants this year. Dean Furda, welcome to Bloomberg News. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Dean, these numbers are pretty disappointing. What's going on here?
Well, I think there's a number of factors that are taking place right now. Although the U.S. demographics are flat to declining, we do see more students applying to more schools, or fewer students applying to more schools. So in the past, where students may have been applying to perhaps 8 schools, they're now applying to, on average, about 12 schools. So again, although there's fewer high school students, they're applying to more schools. And that's the U.S. demographics. Then you also have increases in applications from outside the United States as well.
So, Dean,
if you combine that...
I'm sorry, Dean, I was going to ask, is a sense from students and their parents, they have a better chance if they just widen the pool by sending out more applications?
Well, unfortunately, I think that's the sense, that if you apply to more schools, you are increasing your chances. Unfortunately, I think there's a fatigue factor here as well. And although we can talk about the common application or universal application, a common platform for students to apply, I think once you consider the supplements that are attached to some of these applications, I think there is a diminishing return on some of the applications. So my advice to families would be maybe focus on that 8 to 10 instead of increasing it to 12, because I think there is some fatigue in this process in filling out the applications.
At the same time, you and other universities, you all have been pretty aggressively recruiting, have you not?
Well, I think it's our responsibility as an institution within the admissions office to make sure that students and families understand what we have to offer and how we're different from other institutions. The University of Pennsylvania is a wonderful institution, but it's not for everybody. But we want to make sure that students, wherever they are, understand what we're about, understand our one university policy, our 4 undergraduate schools. So I think the responsibility here, quite honestly, is not just to blanket students of any ability and any background, but really to be strategic and make sure you're contacting students who have demonstrated in the classroom, as well as on standardized testing, that they could be competitive in our applicant pool, and then speak to them about their academic interests as well and how Penn could be a good fit.
So when you get this flood of applications that we're talking about here, how does your office handle it, especially at a time when many different universities are seeing budgets cut?
Certainly. Well, we always have to be mindful of our resources, especially in these economic times. The bottom line is, when I started in college admissions in 1987 or today, this is a labor-intensive process. It takes admission officers taking time to read the stories of these students who are applying. So what has changed also, which is also increasing the applications, is that we could leverage technology in our processes as well.
Right.
So my Vice Dean for Information Management Systems, David Phillips, has done an incredible job to make sure that we're spending time with the applications instead of spending time just on the administrative processes.
Well, you were the Dean of Admissions at Columbia during a large increase in the mid-90s. What's different now, in your opinion?
Well, it's very interesting. I know Janet Lauren, who wrote this article. She graduated from Columbia in 1995, and that was really the front end in the early 90s, where the demographic shifts of the U.S. really changed. There was a decline in the late 80s to the early 90s. I think what's different today, though, is much more of a national applicant pool. Again, to the demographics, the Southeast is growing, the Southwest. In California, as an example, this year, with budget cuts in the higher education system, we saw over a 20% increase from applications in California. Yeah. And then you add into the mix China, Brazil, and countries in Africa where we're seeing increased applications.
Right. Dean,
and then, of course, the technology as well.
Well, Dean, in our last 30 seconds, any thoughts on the legislation signed by President Obama as part of the healthcare reform and how that might help high school students and their families attempting to go to college, at least in the financial phase?
Certainly. I think President Obama's approach for student lending, I think, is what we're talking about, is, you know, the process is hard enough to apply to colleges and then also in the financial aid process. And any simplification to help families who may not come from educated backgrounds to fill out these forms should help families have accessibility to places like the University of Pennsylvania.
All right. Eric Furda, Dean of Admissions at the University of Pennsylvania, joining us this afternoon. Dean Furda, thank you so much.